afternoon. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Well, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here for today's announcement. I want to recognize some of the folks we have with us here. We have FDLE Commissioner Rick Swearigan. We have Eric Sutton, the Executive Director, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And then we have Chief Mark Brown from the Florida Highway Patrol. We have been going over some of the announcements as part of our budget. We'll do the full budget next week, and I think people will be really pleased with our fiscal outlook. But we were able to talk about some of the things we're doing, huge investments in education. We're doing a lot with environmental quality and water resources, and there'll be other segments that I think are very, very important. One of the things we're most proud of is in this budget that we'll be unveiling is what we're going to do to support the men and women of law enforcement. And as most of you remember, you go back last year, the summer of 2020, you had huge movements in different parts of the country, municipalities, even state levels, to attack law enforcement, to defund law enforcement. And many municipalities did take a huge chunk out of their law enforcement budgets, and now they're racing to try to figure out how to get it back in because crime has skyrocketed. And it's truly been one of the most disastrous policies that anyone's ever tried to implement, this whole defund law enforcement. And you see the effects of this every single day in jurisdictions that indulge with poor policies when they're soft on crime. You look at people getting let out without bail now. You just let them right out in different states and different parts of the country. That has catastrophic consequences for public safety. And so, I'm proud to say, even when that was kind of the cause du jour of the media in Florida, we never budged an inch here. We stood with law enforcement the entire time. Last summer, we made clear we had their back. We wanted to make sure our communities were kept safe. And we wanted to show our appreciation that as other jurisdictions were defunding law enforcement or taking money away, that we would fund and then some. And so the budget that I signed for this current fiscal year included $1,000 bonuses for every sworn law enforcement officer, first responder, and EMT who've been working so hard throughout the pandemic in the entire state of Florida. And so we're really happy to do that. And most people that have come up to me or written into our office, it's nice to get money. Obviously, it's not like you're getting super wealthy doing public service, but more than just the money was just the thought, because it showed that the state of Florida supported the people who were wearing the uniform, and that really meant an awful lot for folks. So we were proud to be cutting against the grain, standing for truth the whole time, and delivering some, I think, much needed bonuses. And so we're here today to talk about, well, how do we build off this success in this coming year's budget? And I'm proud to say that in the budget that we'll be unveiling next week, our law enforcement portion of that budget, we will be able to re-up the $1,000 bonuses for all sworn law enforcement, all fire rescue, and all EMTs for the second year in a row. So that's really meaningful, and we're proud that we're able to do that. But we also are going to do much more than that. For the upcoming session in our budget, we're going to have some long-term support, particularly for state law enforcement agencies, and we are going to be putting our money where our mouth is. So we're going to be recommending to the legislature $73 million to increase the minimum pay for entry-level sworn state law enforcement officers by 20% to help our state law enforcement agencies recruit more law enforcement officers. Additionally, and maybe most importantly for the folks we have here, my proposal also includes an increase in pay of 25% for all other state sworn law enforcement personnel to help our state law enforcement agencies retain the folks we already have, and also to reward them for hard work serving and protecting Floridians. So that is going to be huge. You're talking about Highway Patrol, you're talking about Fish and Wildlife, FDLE, all these folks that have been working to see a 25% increase That's meaningful, and I think that shows our commitment. We're also proposing $124 million to increase salaries for correctionals officers at our state prisons. So that'll bring the base salary up to $20 an hour, and these increases will help the agency hire and retain officers so they can continue to keep Floridians safe and prisoners secure. We've already made progress on this front, as many of you know, with the Legislative Budget Committee, and this proposal builds off those discussions. At the end of the day, we need to retain people, we need to attract people, and the compensation's a big part of that. We're also going to put more than $11 million for the Department of Juvenile Justice to bring the minimum pay for juvenile detention officers to $17 per hour and $19 per hour for juvenile probation officers. And finally, in addition to standing up for those who keep us safe from crime, I'm also recommending more than $1 million for our state special risk firefighters to increase their salaries by up to $2,500 a person. Now, increasing salaries for state law enforcement by 20 and 25% respectively is going to make a real difference for those officers. It'll make a real difference for their families. It will help retain a lot of the talented people we have, as well as recruit new people into our highway patrol, into Fish and Wildlife, and into FDLE. And this announcement is in addition to what we'll also have in the budget, which I did announce earlier, are our incentives to recruit new people into law enforcement, whether that's from out of state transferring in. There's a huge demand for a lot of the folks in law enforcement to come to Florida, given how they've been treated in a lot of these places around the country, places like Portland and Seattle and Minneapolis and New York. It's not been good. The morale is low. And so we view that as an opportunity as we have needs in our law enforcement agencies. If you're coming from out of state, or if you're new to law enforcement and you're joining for the first time, you will be eligible for a $5,000 signing bonus, and that is state or local agencies will be able to do that. We're also going to be, as I mentioned in our previous announcement, providing the state officer certification exam free of charge to law enforcement officers relocating to Florida, and covering the cost of any necessary equivalent training programs for relocating officers up to $1,000 per officers. We're also, in addition to that, creating a Law Enforcement Academy scholarship program to cover the cost of enrollment for men and women seeking to serve their state and communities through law enforcement. And for those attending a private academy, an amount equal to the average tuition and fees incurred at a public institution will be covered. And so this is probably the most robust package that's been proposed probably anywhere in the country. We feel that it's warranted. We also feel it's the right thing to do, and we feel that we have an opportunity strategically to get an advantage and to recruit not just great people in our state to go into it, which we'll do, but also some of the best throughout the country who are looking for greener pastures. And so we're proud of this. I think we'll get strong support in the legislature for it. And I'm just happy to be able to be leading the effort and leading the charge here. I want Chief Mark Brown from the Highway Patrol to be able to come up and say a few things.
Thank you, Governor. On behalf of the Florida Highway Patrol and all state law enforcement, I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to the Governor DeSantis for his unwavering support for the men and women in law enforcement, not only in our state, but across the country. You know, as we celebrated Thanksgiving just recently, I couldn't help but, think about how grateful I am for the governor's leadership and for his willingness to do the right thing and what's best for the people of our state. This pay proposal will go a long way to support our current members who do a great job day in and day out. Our state law enforcement officers provide a vital service to our state, and they just are very deserving of this increase. In addition, the pay raise along with the hiring bonuses, as the governor said, will help us fill our vacancies. Recruiting highly qualified law enforcement officers who are dedicated to public service is more important now than ever. This will make Florida's state law enforcement salaries much more competitive, and again, as the governor said, hopefully get them to stay within law enforcement or state law enforcement and not go to other agencies. The governor's made it clear since day one that he supports law and order, and that he supports law enforcement and the important function we play in our communities. But the proposal sends a clear message not only to our members who, again, do a great job, but it also sends a clear message to our families. our spouses, our kids, our parents, and just shows that Florida's leadership truly cares and appreciates what we do out there on the road. So again, thank you, Governor, for being a champion for the great men and women of law enforcement. We appreciate what you do. Thank you.
One of the things I think that's been most frustrating to witness in terms of law enforcement is how anti-law enforcement narratives are consistently spun by these national corporate media outlets. They will swoop into a community, they will create a false narrative, and then they kind of just leave and they never correct the record when what they're saying is obviously false. And we're seeing that right now in real time with Waukesha, Wisconsin, in terms of what happened there. You will look at some of these corporate outlets and they will say that an SUV drove into a parade of Christmas folks. And you're thinking, like, really? Is that how it works? The SUVs, they just drive by themselves? This just kind of happened? And they say, oh, this was a big accident. You never actually hear the discussion about who committed this, what was the motivation. This guy was a career criminal, let out on, didn't really have any bail, basically, should not have even been on the street, had clear anti-white animus, and this was an intentional act. And it seems like, you know, for corporate press, they're more apt to characterize a parent who goes to a school board meeting to protest bad policies as a domestic terrorist than somebody who intentionally rams an SUV into a crowd of innocent people. So you have at least 6 have died. You have many more that have been injured. I know many people are in the hospital. And so let's just be clear. This was not a car just driving in. This was an attack by a felon who did that, who should not have been on the street. And we'll see what the actual motivation was. It very well may have been in response to what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. And you have to wonder if that's the case. Almost assuredly, this guy's view of Rittenhouse was colored by all these media lies. He brought a rifle across state lines. That's a lie. They said that the initial altercation with Jacob Blake, that Blake was unarmed. That's a lie. They covered up Blake's criminal history. And then they said that Rittenhouse shot. And first of all, when you're self-defense, it doesn't matter, you know, kind of what race, but they would say that he shot. Most people didn't know that he shot 3 white people. People thought, so that's what the media has been doing, and they tend to point a target on law enforcement's back. But this is just wrong, and these lies have got to stop. And if it doesn't fit your narrative, sweeping the facts under the rug is not doing the service that people deserve. It is what we expect, unfortunately, from a lot of these places, but it's wrong. And I think the way they've treated law enforcement across the board over the last 2 years has been an absolute disgrace. So let's just be clear. They are not wanting to cover this Wisconsin thing for what it is. They are not wanting the facts to come out the way they are because the facts do not support their narrative, and it's all about pursuing partisan narratives. And speaking of narratives, we are not in Florida going to allow any media-driven hysteria to do anything to infringe people's individual freedoms when it comes to any type of COVID variants. And when I saw Fauci on TV yesterday saying that he couldn't rule out lockdowns, and then even today President Biden didn't rule it out, I said, no, not now, for now. And let me just say, in Florida, we will not let them lock you down. We will not let them take your jobs. We will not let them harm your businesses. We will not let them close your schools. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The lockdowns didn't stop COVID. Forced masking, they said last year, would end the pandemic if 80% wore masks. Many more than that were wearing masks, and it hasn't worked. They said you could get COVID off surfaces, which isn't true. They've not been honest about the origins of the virus, and they haven't been forthright about natural immunity. And with these travel restrictions, I was probably the first governor in January of 2020 to call for travel restrictions from China. I supported President Trump when he did that. But we have to take a step back and acknowledge that those travel restrictions just didn't work. The virus had already spread. And so whatever this variant is, the fact that you identify some in southern Africa, that does not mean that it's not in any corner of the globe. It's an airborne respiratory virus. So I think those restrictions are not going to work. They haven't worked in the past. And clearly, to even be entertaining the idea of doing destructive, disastrous policies like lockdowns, I mean, honestly, I'm not surprised because I think some people are just wired for this. But it is not going to happen in the state of Florida. You can take that to the bank. All right, take some questions.
You had put in place travel restrictions, obviously, in the past couple of years at the border. Of course, international flights were being kept out of the U.S. That has changed now. We're seeing countries like Israel, Japan start to shut down people coming in. Are you saying that will not happen in Florida?
Well, so the flights I don't control, as you know. That's the federal government can control that. I've been arguing to allow more flights in from South America and all these other places. We had most of that shut off for a long, long time. I think it's ineffective. I don't think it works. You can't cripple your society for fear of a variant where we don't even have any data, really meaningful data on. The South African doctor that identified it, you know, she said this has been very mild. And so why would you be doing knee-jerk reactions? And I think we also just have to be honest, and I've been saying this for a long time, you know, and Fauci even admitted this. This is the first time I've ever heard him admit this. He admitted this yesterday, that COVID will not go away, that it will end up being an endemic respiratory virus. They had been committed to a, quote, zero COVID policy that thought you could eradicate it. It has animal reservoirs. You're not going to eradicate. It's going to end up being an endemic respiratory virus. So that's just the reality. And so it's already spread. It has a seasonal pattern. Remember when I said over the summer, we have seasonal waves in the South. A lot of the corporate press, oh my gosh. Now that it's taking off in the North, they don't have governors that they want to blame for it, and so now they're saying it's seasonal. But that's obvious that that's the case. If you look, when states in the same region go up and down at the same time, that's obviously the pattern that's happening. So doing any type of lockdown or restrictions is absolutely not the right thing to do. And again, I supported the China thing in January 2020. I think I was the first governor to call for it. But just because you identify it in one place, that doesn't mean that it's not in these other places. And the fact of the matter is, what are you going to do? Indefinite restriction? It's not going to ever be eradicated. So that's just the bottom line. People just need to understand that. And I also would say the treatments that we pioneered here as the first state to really embrace a lot of those treatments, they've proven very effective. If you look at Florida, we've had the lowest COVID in the country for over a month now, and one of the lowest for quite a while. Our hospitalization, we've never had fewer people COVID positive in Florida hospitals the entire pandemic, and we're number 2, I think the second lowest in the continental United, or in the whole United States. The infection rate, apart from cases by COVIDestim.org, we're the lowest period there. And we're not restricting people. We're trusting people to make decisions. People have access to be able to take medications, vaccine as they see fit. And I think that that's just a much better approach. That's absolutely the approach we're going to continue on.
You have concerns with the reports of this coming out and then what's being said at the national level about this impacting tourism numbers here?
Well, here's what I would say. It's a good question. How does that impact tourism? If you look August of 2021, we had a bona fide Delta wave. There's no doubt about it. But our tourism was up compared to pre-COVID August of 2019. Hotel revenue up 12%, domestic flights up. And so I think what that shows is that Americans generally, particularly Floridians, but Americans, they want to be able to make decisions for themselves. You had it was actually a great game, Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan is the epicenter of COVID in the United States now, yet they had the stadium packed. And you know what? If that were Florida State and we had the highest, the press would go crazy. I didn't really hear much criticism of it, and quite frankly, I didn't criticize it because I think those are folks that make the decision that they want to go out and they want to be able to live their lives. And I think that's what we should want people to do. So I'm very bullish on the tourism here because I think for 2 reasons. One is people want to be able to make their own decisions. I think that they are done being told what to do. But I think also the fact that Florida has worked so hard to protect people's decision-making and freedom. If people have decisions about where they want to visit, they know you can come to Florida, you can get off that plane, You can go get a bite to eat, and guess what? They ain't going to force you to cough up your medical papers. You can do anything. You can make the choices you want to make. And I think that's very appealing for people. And clearly, the places that have done vaccine passports, mandates, all this stuff, many of those places are having escalating COVID cases. And we've obviously been declining. I mean, our hospitalizations peaked the third week of August. And we're still going down on that. I thought it would have leveled out by now, and maybe it is leveling out now. I never thought we'd get, at a state of 22.5 million people, to get below 1,000 COVID-positive patients, and not all of them are even being treated for COVID. That's anyone that's COVID-positive going into hospitals. I didn't think we'd ever get below 1,000. We are. Maybe it'll keep going down. I hope so. But we assume that there'll be a bottom out, and then at winter you typically have more. I don't think it'll be summer level, but I think you'll see that. But people are going to be able to make their decisions, and that is what we've got to keep. And I just think that to even be entertaining some of these draconian things, we're not going to stand for it. But it's a huge, huge mistake to go down that road.
Take away from the men and women who are here, because you guys all deserve the credit for this pay raise. But since you are here, sir, you want to talk about Dr. Steele and Sophia that are all going down?
So here's the thing. It was wrong to force that mask on her. She's got Down syndrome. People are making a big deal, say the police didn't think they should bring criminal charges. I never said anything about criminal charges. She was not treated right. That school district was not following state policy. That's just a fact. And now we're happily in a better place where people's rights are respected, where parents' rights are being respected. And I think that that's just a much better situation for all involved. But I don't get hung up on some of these policies, whether someone should be prosecuted or not, because I don't know all the individual facts. I just know it was wrong to do what they did to a girl who clearly had every reason to not have that happen to her. All right, we'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.